Emily did not move. She held Prince Leo closer beneath her cloak and watched the darkness between the pines fill with golden eyes. At first there were only a few, low to the ground and silent as snowfall. Then more appeared along the ridge, beneath the cedar branches, beside the frozen creek, until the entire hollow seemed ringed by quiet, breathing shadows. Wolves. Not border rogues. Not wild strays. Royal wolves. Each one marked by the faint silver sheen that ran through the Blackwood bloodline, like moonlight through deep water. Emily knew them. She had cleaned eyes from their paws after winter patrols. She had sat beside them when healers were too afraid to touch their wounds. She had whispered to the frightened young ones and sung to the old ones when their hearing began to fade. But she had never seen them like this, gathered without a command, watching her with a stillness that felt almost sacred. Leo stirred against her chest, his tiny nose pressed to the mark flickering on her wrist. The nearest wolf stepped forward, a gray female with a scar across one ear and eyes bright as candle flame. Emily remembered her name from the kennels. Willow. 3 months ago, Willow had refused food after losing her mate on patrol, and Emily had sat outside her enclosure every night until the wolf finally accepted warm broth from her hand. Now Willow lowered her head, not in fear, but in recognition. Emily's breath caught. "I am not the one you should bow to," she whispered. The wolf only lowered herself farther into the snow. Around the hollow, the others followed. One by one, massive bodies sank into the white drifts, silent and deliberate, until nearly 50 royal wolves bowed around an accused Omega holding the missing heir. The forest did not feel empty anymore. It felt like a court older than stone, older than crowns, older than the laws that Mason Drake had twisted against her. Emily should have felt protected. Instead, fear rose through her as sharp as the winter air, because if the wolves had found her, Mason could not be far behind. The thought had barely formed before voices cut through the trees above the creek. "Tracks lead this way," one enforcer called. Another lantern flared between the trunks, yellow light shaking across the snow. Emily tightened her arms around Leo. The cub gave a faint, sleepy sound, too weak to understand the danger. Mason Drake stepped into view at the top of the slope, his dark coat snapping in the wind, for enforcers behind him carrying lanterns and silver-tipped restraint poles meant for rogue wolves. His face was calm at first. Then he saw Emily alive. He saw Leo in her arms. And finally, he saw the wolves. For one perfect second, Mason forgot to pretend. His expression opened into something raw and startled, and Emily knew the truth had reached him faster than any accusation could. He had expected to find a frozen cub and a guilty Omega. He had not expected witnesses. "Step away from the air," Mason ordered, recovering his voice. "All of you. She has bewitched the royal wolves." Not a single wolf obeyed. Mason's jaw tightened. He lifted one hand, signaling the enforcers forward. The men hesitated at the edge of the slope. Emily could smell their fear beneath the smoke of their lanterns. They were trained to command Omegas, not to walk into a hollow where the king's own wolves stood like a living wall. "Emily," Mason said, his voice dropping into something smoother, almost kind. "Think carefully. Bring the cub to me, and I can still tell the court you were confused. Scared. Misled." Emily looked down at Leo, at the small silver face tucked against her collarbone, at the tiny breaths warming the inside of her cloak. Then she looked back at Mason. "You left him in a trap," she said. The wind carried her words through the hollow. Mason's eyes flicked, just once, toward the enforcers. It was enough. The wolves heard it. The gray female beside Emily rose first. Then the others stood, not snarling, not lunging, just rising with a quiet power that made the snow seem to hold its breath. From the deepest part of the hollow came a heavier sound, the slow step of something enormous moving through the trees. The royal wolves parted. A black wolf emerged, larger than any creature Emily had ever seen in the kennels, his fur dark as midnight over the mountains, his eyes burning gold beneath the storm. Mason went pale. One of the enforcers whispered, "That is the Alpha King's wolf." Emily's heart stopped for half a beat. The black wolf did not look at Mason first. He looked at Leo. Then he looked at Emily, and the whole forest seemed to bow around that gaze. Mason took one step back. Far away, beyond the ridge, a horn sounded from Blackwood Citadel, deep and royal and impossible to ignore. The king was coming. The royal wing was warmer than any place Emily Carter had ever been allowed to stand, but warmth did not make it feel safe. The room given to her had tall windows overlooking the snow-covered training grounds, a fireplace large enough to heat her old quarters 3 times over, and 2 guards posted outside the door like reminders that protection and imprisonment could wear the same uniform. Prince Leo slept on a padded bench near the fire, wrapped in a soft blue blanket, his small silver ears twitching each time thunder rolled beyond the mountains. Emily sat beside him with her back straight and her hands folded in her lap, afraid that if she touched anything too fine, someone would come in and tell her she had mistaken kindness for permission. The call she had heard beneath the citadel walls had faded by the time the guards brought her upstairs, but it had not disappeared from her mind. It had been low, wounded, and old, the sound of a wolf hidden where no royal wolf should have been hidden. She closed her eyes and tried to find it again. Instead, she felt another presence in the hall. Controlled footsteps. Quiet authority. The guards outside shifted before the door opened. King Caleb Blackwood entered without his council, without Vanessa, without Mason, and somehow that made the room feel more dangerous. Not because he threatened her, but because silence with him carried more weight than a crowd. He had changed out of his storm-dark coat, but the cold of the forest still seemed to follow him. His storm-gray eyes moved first to Leo, softening so briefly that Emily might have imagined it, then to her wrists, where the marks from the silver-threaded rope had faded but not vanished. "The healer says he is stable because of you," Caleb said. Emily looked down. "He is stable because he wanted to live." Most people would have run from the trap. Most people were not the only one who heard him. That made Caleb go still. The fire cracked softly between them. Emily regretted the words at once, not because they were false, but because they revealed too much. Caleb stepped closer, stopping several feet away as if he had learned from Leo that distance mattered. "How long have you heard wolves that are not yours?" he asked. Emily watched the flames rather than his face. "Since I was a child. I thought all guardians could. Guardians record feeding schedules and open kennel gates." His voice was quiet, but not unkind. "They do not answer cub links across miles of storm." Emily's wrist warmed beneath her sleeve. She covered it with her other hand. Caleb noticed, of course. Kings noticed everything. "The council will use that mark against you if they see it before we understand it," he said. "Vanessa will call it witchcraft. Mason will call it proof. And what will you call it?" Emily asked before fear could stop her. Caleb did not answer quickly. His gaze dropped to Leo, sleeping peacefully only because Emily was near. "I do not know yet." It should have hurt less than an accusation. It did not. Emily nodded and looked away. "Then I am still your prisoner. You are under my protection." There is a difference when the door locks from the outside. For the first time, something like pain crossed his face. He moved to the table by the door and set down a tray she had not noticed he carried. Warm soup, bread, honeyed tea, and a small jar of ointment for her wrists. "If I release you before the trial, the council can declare that I have been influenced. If I defend you openly before the evidence is heard, they can claim the throne is compromised. The old law forbids an alpha king from favoring an accused omega in a matter concerning royal blood." Emily looked at the food, then at him. "So you believe me quietly?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "I am trying to keep you alive quietly." The words settled between them, warmer than the fire and more frightening than the storm. Emily did not know what to do with a king who sounded angry at the law for standing between them. Leo shifted in his sleep and gave a small whimper. Emily reached for him at once, and Caleb did too, then stopped himself before his hand crossed into the cub's space. The restraint in that single motion told Emily more than any apology could have. He loved his son enough to stay back if staying back helped him breathe. She softened despite herself. "He will trust you again," she whispered. "He never stopped loving you." Fear just as loud footsteps. Caleb looked at her then, really looked, and the room seemed to narrow until the fire, the storm, and the guards beyond the door vanished to the edges of the world. "My wolf says you smell like home," he said, so quietly she almost thought the words were not meant for her. Emily's breath caught. Before she could answer, voices rose in the corridor. Vanessa's sharp tone cut through the door, followed by Mason's lower one. Caleb's expression closed at once, the king returning like armor over the man. He turned toward the sound. As he reached the door, Emily heard the hidden wolf again beneath the citadel stones, clearer this time, desperate and familiar. Help her find the trapmaker. The grand hall did not erupt after Caleb spoke. It did something far more powerful. It stayed silent. Every noble, every council member, every guard beneath the silver banners seemed to understand that the old order had shifted while they were busy looking down at an Omega. Emily Carter remained on the marble floor with Prince Leo pressed against her side and the royal wolves kneeling around her like a living vow. For the first time in her life, no one was asking her to disappear. Councilman Alden was the first to lower his head. Not deeply, not willingly, but enough. One by one, the others followed, their pride bending beneath the weight of what the cub's memory had shown. Mason Drake tried to step backward, as if distance could erase ink, scent, and truth, but the black wolf at the doorway moved into his path. No growl, no threat, just presence. Vanessa Hale stood frozen near the throne, her perfect white cloak suddenly looking less like purity and more like snow over thin ice. Caleb did not shout at them. He did not need to. He ordered the ledger read aloud, page by page, before the court. The payments, the gate schedule, the false scarf, the planned accusation. Each word stripped another layer from the lie that had nearly buried Emily alive. Mason was removed from rank and taken to the royal tribunal to answer for betrayal of the crown. Vanessa's family seal was seized, her claim to the Luna trial dissolved, and House Hale was placed under royal investigation before the same nobles who had once bowed to her smile. Yet Emily felt no triumph. Only exhaustion, deep and shaking, the kind that comes after running through darkness for so long that daylight feels unreal. Leo looked up at her, his storm gray eyes clearer now, and whispered, "Stay." The word entered the room softer than a command and stronger than one. Caleb turned toward Emily then, and the king everyone feared seemed to step aside just enough for the man beneath the crown to breathe. He approached slowly, stopping where she could choose whether to meet him. "Emily Carter," he said, his voice low enough that the court had to lean into the silence. "You owe this kingdom nothing. It doubted you. It accused you. It let rank speak louder than mercy." Emily's throat tightened. The mark on her wrist glowed gently beneath Leo's paw. Caleb continued, "But if you choose to remain, Blackwood will recognize you as Moon Guardian of the royal bloodline. Not as a servant, not as a prisoner, not as anyone's secret." The wolves lifted their heads. The moonstone statue behind the throne shone faintly, silver light pouring across the steps like dawn before dawn. Caleb looked at her, and for the first time since the storm began, there was no law standing in his eyes, only a question. "And as for me," he said, each word careful, as if he knew how precious choice could be to someone who had rarely been given any. "I will not claim what has not been freely offered. I will wait. I will earn your trust in the open, not hide it in the shadows." Emily stared at him, at this alpha king who could command armies but would not command her heart. The court expected an answer worthy of ceremony. Emily only reached down and touched Leo's soft silver ear, then looked toward the open doors where the snow had finally stopped falling. Beyond the citadel, the training grounds lay white and quiet under the first pale line of sunrise. She remembered the dungeon window, the frozen woods, the trap beneath the cedar. She remembered running not toward safety, but toward a small voice that had trusted her when no one else did. "I escaped for justice," Emily said, her voice steady at last. "I will stay